In this video, we'll be reviewing measures of central tendency. So numbers called measures of central tendency can be used to describe the center of data, and the most common of these measures are mean, median, and mode. And you should have learned these last year in 5th grade, but we're reviewing them this year. So the mean is the sum or addition of the numbers in a set of data divided by the number of items in the pieces of data. The mean is also the balance point. So you're going to add up all the digits and then you're going to divide it by how many there are. Now, mean is the balance point, and we're going to talk about that later on. Mean is also the average. So you may have heard the saying, my teacher's not mean, they just give me my average, because when your teacher does your grade, they're doing the average of your scores. So the next one is the median. That's the middle number in a set of data when the data are arranged in ascending. Now you have to put them in order from least to greatest or greatest to least. I like least to greatest because if you don't put them in order, you could make any number the middle number just by placing it in the middle. So you have to put them in order. And if the data is an even number, the median is the mean or the average of the two middle numbers. So what that means is if you have 2, 3, 4, and 5, there's only 4 numbers here. So to find the middle, you're going to add 3 and 4 together, which is 7, and then divide it by the 2 that you added together. So 7 divided by 2 would be 3.5. And if you think about it, 3.5 would fall between 3 and 4. The last one is the numbers of items that appears the most, and that's mode. Oops. In a set of data. So I have a little song that goes with this, and you may have gotten a rhyme from your 5th grade teacher. Our song is add, divide. That's how you find the mean. Mode's the one you see the most. Median's in between. So add, divide. That's how you find the mean. Mode's the one you see the most. And then the median is in between because it's the middle number. Now, the other thing we need to talk about is an outlier. An outlier is a number that is outside part of the group, and an outlier affects the mean. And you guys see this with your grades a lot. So if you get, say you get an F on a test, that F on your test drops your grade very quickly for that class. Now, if you get an A and you've gotten a whole bunch of other A's, it's more likely to stay an A and stay the same. But if you get an F, it drops it very quickly because the F is an outlier. It's outside the rest of the data set. So when does this affect us? So when we talk about mean, median, and mode, we have specific order that we use them in. We say mean first, so mean is the first one we always try to use. But we can't use mean when there's an outlier. We can use the median when there is an outlier, but we cannot use the mean. Then we also have the mode. We rarely use the mode unless the set has a lot of identical numbers. So these are when they're most useful, and you're going to need to know that. The mean is our first choice because we say it first. If there's an outlier, we jump to median. And then if there's a lot of identical numbers, then we'll use the mode, but that's the only other time. Now, the range is something a little bit different. Now, it's not a measure, but we talk about range. So it's the difference between the greatest number and the least number in a data set. And it's not a measure because you can think about it, it starts with R. All the other measures start with M. If it's a measure, it has to start with M. Range is just another thing we use to help us, though. So range is the highest number minus the lowest number. So in the example that we had up here, where we had 2, 3, 4, and 5 as our data set, the highest number is 5, the lowest number is 2, high minus low would be a range of 3. Now we can add this to our song, so we can have add, divide, that to find the mean, mode's the one you see the most, median's in between, range is high minus low. So there's your little song. Now let's look at the next page. When to choose mean, median, or mode. So let's look at some examples. Betty has received the following scores on her math test: 75, 82, 68, 95. What is the best way to determine her current score in class? Okay, looking at these numbers, we want to use the mean always, unless there's an outlier or there's multiple numbers. I don't see an outlier in this because they're all pretty close to each other in distance. So we're going to use the mean for this one. In example 2, Ms. Smith loves M&Ms and wants to determine which color is least represented in the bag. Well, mode is the one you see the most, so don't you think it could also be the one to find the least? So mode is the answer to this one. In example 3, Julia is practicing for a marathon. Her current times are in minutes: 5.2, 7.5, 6.2, 3.9, 4.1, 5.1, and 6.3. If we look at these numbers, we want to use the mean, but it's asking determine which runtime is in the middle. So which one says middle? That would be median. And then I want you to try the last 2 examples very quickly. So a pet store is trying to determine which hamsters are most popular for their customers. So that's going to be mode. And the weatherman wants to share rainfall statistics with his viewers. How would he share the monthly rainfall for this past winter? Well, usually when the weather people are telling us the statistics, they're giving us the average. Oops. You can hear that now when they're talking about the temperature outside, the average temperature for this time of year. So that's going to be the mean. Now let's actually practice finding that mean, median, and mode. So I want to start with I'm actually going to start with the second one on this page. So let's start by finding the mean, and this is a calculator unit, so you can add those all together. When you add them, you get 36.03. Then you're going to divide them by 5, because there's 5 numbers, and that's going to equal 7.206. Then you need to put them in order: 3.03, 6.3, 8.1, 8.2, and 10.4. The middle number in this case would be 8.1, so that's the median. And the mode is the one you see the most, but there is no mode, so we're going to write none. The range is the highest minus the lowest, so 10.4 minus 3.03, and that gives us an answer of 7.37. I want you to do the top one on your own. So find the mean, the median, the mode, and the range. So if you find the mean, it would be 35 when you add, divided by 7, which equals, 5. 37 divided by 5, which is 7 as the mean. The median, if you put them in order, would be 8. The mode is 8, And the range is the highest minus the lowest, which would be 10 minus 3, which is 7. So if we look at the next two example, Roger bowled 7 games last weekend. His scores were 155, 165, 138, 172, 127, 193, and 142. Which measure best describes Roger's score, mean, median, or mode? And then it says, what is the range? So when you're solving questions like this and they say, which one do you feel is best, mean, median, or mode? I think it's best for you to put them in order first so you can actually look to see what do the numbers actually look like if we were to place them on a number line. So if we put these in order, our smallest number is going to be 127, and then 138 comes next. And I recommend that you cross them off as you go so that you don't miss one. 142 would be next, and then 155, and then 165, 172, and 193. And then always double check to count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to count here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have enough numbers. Now, if I look here, I have a little bit of an outlier, and outliers are kind of, in your opinion, you have to kind of look at them. They're not always so glaringly small or glaringly large. But I would say in this case, 127 is about 10 lower than 138. So, I'm sorry, not 127. What am I thinking? 127 is close to 138. The outlier in this case is 193. Because we have 172, and then to get to 193, you have to add almost 20 to get to 193. So this is the outlier. So when we have an outlier, we're going to use the median. We can't use our favorite, which is the mean. We have to use the median when there's an outlier. That's our second favorite. And then the last question, it says, what is the range? Well, when we find the range, it's the highest is the highest number, so 193 minus the lowest number, which is 127. 193 minus 127, and you may use a calculator if needed, is 66. So that's our range. And then our last example that we're going to do together is number 2. It says, what is the mode of this data set? And some of you may be able to see it. The mode in this case is 84 because there's 3 of them. If you have trouble finding the mode, just like up here in problem number 2, put them in order first, and then you'll start to see which number shows up the most that is the mode. So what I want for you to do is I want you to do 3, 4, and 5 on your own. And when you're ready, unpause the video and I'll show you the answers. And here are your answers for number 3 and number 4. Number 3, it says the number of pages Carolyn wrote in her journal each day from Monday to Friday. Which the best measure? Well, you can see that there's 2 3s, so automatically we have more than one number showing up. So that puts us into mode being the best for that. We also have an outlier, so we couldn't do mean, and we have the double 3, so we're not going to use median. For number 4, we have the number of miles Jenna cycled each week for a 7-week period is shown. Put them in order first. Find your mean, and that should be 159 divided by 7. So you have to add them together, then divide by how many there are. There's 7, which gives you 37. When you're finding the median, this one is a little bit more numbers, so I think it's helpful. Don't cross them out because if you make a mistake, it's more difficult to erase. Just underline them. So 1 on one side, 1 on the other side. 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. 3 on one side, 3 on the other side. Make sure you stay balanced on both sides so that way you can find that 36 is the middle number. The mode, in this case, no numbers show up more than once, so the mode is none. And which measure best describes the number of miles cycled? Well, there's no outliers, so automatically I can use my favorite, which is the mean. And then the last question says, which measure does an outlier most likely affect? and an outlier most likely affects the mean. Just like your grade that you get in class, if you get an F on a test when you've gotten all A's, it's going to drop your grade for your class very quickly.